Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Ani Anderson, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Find Your Soul's Agenda, the one word that will make your whole life a success. Now, Ani is the creator of Find Your Soul's Agenda process and the co-creator of the sensation-based mindset coaching. In 2000, after graduating with a master's degree in occupational therapy, she quickly found that the constraints of the Western medical system did not offer her the creativity or freedom to be able to deliver complete and meaningful treatments to her patients. So she left to pursue private practice, helping people heal using energy medicine practices. So let's welcome to the show, Ani Anderson.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, you must be so excited about your new book. I mean, it's getting such great reviews.
I am, and I'm thrilled for all the great reviews, and I'm even more thrilled for all the messages I'm getting from people who are saying, oh my gosh, this process has been so beneficial to me. The translation of the work into the book form and people having results from that has just been awesome.
Well, we're going to dive more into that in a minute, but before we go there, I would love for you to share with our audience, what is the inspiration behind writing this book?
Well, actually, the inspiration behind writing it, I guess personally for me, I've always wanted to write a book. I didn't think it would be this one. The inspiration for this particular book is quite simply that I've been using it for a number of years in my coaching practice, and the results have been really so unbelievably remarkable to me. It became something that at first I did because it was kind of novel with my clients, and then it got such profound results. I started doing it with everyone. And so, I just wanted to be able to reach as many people as possible so that as many people as possible could benefit from the work. And of course, there are only so many people who can reach me personally. So, that really was the inspiration behind the book, was how can we get this out, this really profound technique out to as many people as possible.
Well, it's interesting, just what takes a writer along its path. And you're right. I mean, there's only so many work hours within a day. You can hit make such a bigger impact by having this book out where people can kind of dive in and have their own personal transformation. You start off in the book where it talks about striving to be normal is dangerous. Why did you start with that chapter?
That was really the epiphany for me. I'm a high achiever kind of person. I don't like to say perfectionist because I see the benefits and the drawbacks to every situation, but I definitely have been a person who has strived for outward success in my life. I've had a lot of outward success, but really for myself, one of the most profound insights for me in my own life was this realization that I was striving for things that I didn't necessarily want to be striving for. I was working too hard, just like everybody seems to work so hard. I was striving to make a certain amount of money, like it seemed that everybody was striving to make a certain amount of money. And it wasn't doing good things for my psyche. It wasn't doing good things for my family. It wasn't doing great things for my body. And, I was really kind of at a low point. No, I wasn't I was very much at a low point in my life, and evaluating myself and realizing all of this striving not only wasn't necessarily getting me anywhere, it was not healthy. And so I just stopped and I looked around, and I was literally outside in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I looked around me, and I thought, how did I forget to just be natural? How did I forget to just be my natural self? And when I started asking myself that question, it really hit me. I was trying to be normal. I was trying to fit in with my peers, with the people who I saw, I hate to say it, but it's true, on social media, who I thought were achieving things. And, I started to think about that and think about what it meant to fit in and be normal. And wow, that's not really what I wanted to go for in my life. I don't want to be like one of the statistics that, comes up that people are sicker than ever and they're on medications and they're unhappy and they're stressed out. So I really do think that striving to be normal can be dangerous. Rather, when we start to look at how we can be natural, that really opened up profound awareness for me.
Yeah, I can see where that is. When I look back on my business career, and I think a lot of us are kind of taught this. It's like you go out in the workplace, you strive really hard, and it may or may not be something you really want. It's kind of like you're chasing, kind of like how a dog chases its tail sometimes, and you get to the end and you're like, oh, it's just my tail, So it's so, you get the accolades, you get, the high-paying job, but, at the end, are you really fulfilled as a person?
Yeah, exactly. It really, there were so many things to evaluate in my life then, and what the major realization that I came to over the course of what was really probably about a year was I really liked myself. I really liked my family. I really loved where I live. There were so many lovely things about my life that were right in front of me, and I wasn't giving myself enough credit for those things. And now, as I go out in the world and, I do have a really successful business and a successful relationship that people ask me about all the time and stuff. The thing that I really say I'm most proud of is the person who I am. I'm proud at the end of the day about the interactions I've had with people and the way I am in the world. And I got to that place from really having to evaluate this concept of normal and natural and really sink into what was right in front of me all along. And that I'm really glad to have gotten to that place in my life. It's so unbelievably satisfying.
It really, and your book walks people through this journey, so it can also become their journey, because there's so many people that are going through this, going, you know what, I don't feel like I'm in a place where I'm even connected with anything. And you have a chapter in your book where I love it, because you talk about everything is energy. We live in a world of duality, but beneath it all, we know we're all connected. And I love that, because it's so true.
It's so true, and nowadays it's kind of like the hip thing to say, but I think that there's not really a practical understanding around what that means. I was actually thinking about it this morning as I was taking my daily walk around my very quiet dead-end road in the woods that I live on. We say this thing about all is one, but really what it comes down to is we are all energy, and that's the practicality of it, and how that manifests itself during the day as we're going through life and interacting with other people. It's really quite magical. There is so much that we can do, not only to be the person that we want to be, but to help other people. Day in and day out, what people say to me that they want more than anything else is to help other people. And there's so much that we can do, so much more than we know, to help other people by understanding that we're all energy.
Yeah. Without a doubt. When we see it from that level, it's like everything we do, not only to ourselves, but to other people around us, affects everybody. And so when we look at that, it really has us kind of taking a little bit of a pause, going, you know what, maybe I should treat myself with greater kindness, or maybe I should treat other people with greater kindness, because it really does affect everybody.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's really powerful. It's so simple and so profound.
Yeah. Well, I think most people would be very interested in this law that you have in your book. It's the law of rhythm, especially when we talk about money. And I'd love for you to expand on that for our listeners.
Sure. The law of rhythm is a natural law of the universe, or law of nature, that there's an up and down flow to everything. It happens if you look outside and you look at the seasons, the night and day, the tides. There's rhythms all around us. And so money is a great one to speak about, because, as a business owner and entrepreneur, we're thinking about bringing in cash flow all the time. And the reality is that everything is subject to the natural laws. And so we're going to have times, the natural law of rhythm, where there's ups and there's downs. Now, part of the good thing about understanding that is we know it. So when it happens, we're less likely to freak out and get ourselves in stress and anxiety and worry and all those things that seriously deplete our energy and our health and our relationships for sure. So just knowing that is really, really helpful. But also, what can we do about it? So thinking about our cash flow and our businesses and our money in terms of how can I work with the natural laws rather than be ignorant to them? And it reminds me of quite simply how it is at the grocery store nowadays. I mean, years ago, I remember as a kid, we used to have, I grew up in New Jersey, we used to have corn, maybe it was in June. My great-grandmother we'd go over to her house and she'd have bags of corn and we'd eat corn, and we hadn't had corn since last summer, and it was a really big deal. Nowadays, you go to the grocery store and they've figured out how to have corn at the grocery store all year round. You know, back then we only had it in the summer when it was growing locally. And that's how the stores have figured out a way to work with the law of rhythm so that we can have corn all year round. And we too can do this with money by structuring our businesses specifically in such a way, or our personal lives or our savings or whatever, in such a way that there's always money there. And boy, I'll tell you, since I've really worked on this in my own life over the past 3 years in sincerity, it's really allowed me to actually live a life that's even more impactful for the lives of others, because I'm no longer in a place where the law of rhythm is coming and catching me off guard. I know it's there. I work with it intentionally. And, there's always money there because we've intentionally created cushions and things like that.
Yeah. Well, when people really understand that law, it makes things so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. That and all the other laws. When you know the laws of nature, they're already operating within your life anyway. If you don't know about them, they literally come and seem to pull the rug out from underneath of you sometimes. But if you know about them, you can work with them. I really think that it's one of the most empowering things that a person can do is to learn what the laws are and then to continue to study them and see how they're working within our own lives.
Well, and so with your experience, and all the different laws there are, and you've got quite a few listed in your book, where do you see people normally get hung up on? Like, what's one of the laws they're like, well, I have a hard time with this, or they don't quite get it until they read your book?
Yeah, if my husband was answering that question, he'd answer with his favorite law, but I'm going to answer with my favorite law, and that's the law of polarity. I definitely see the law of polarity come up and keep people in unconscious behavior more than anything else, but probably because it's my favorite law to work with. And so, the law of polarity really is about how we do live in a world of duality. But even more than that, I love to describe it in a quarter. We are literally, there's always two sides to something, to a situation, and they are literally attached to one another. So, for example, with the quarter, if you have a quarter in your hand and you see the heads of the quarter, you know that the tails are there. Because of experience before you've seen it before, it's there, but you can't actually see it when you're looking at the heads. If you flipped it over, you could see the tails of the quarter. And it's attached to the heads. It's on the exact same quarter. And it's like that with our circumstances in our life. So what I mean by that is, for example, there's always two sides. So just to use a money example again, if there is lack, there must be abundance. That's natural law. Everything is created as a whole, and everything is created as a whole with these two sides in duality. And one side is attached to the other. That's the fascinating thing that I love about the law of polarity. So if we have lack in our life, there must be abundance, and it must be attached to where the lack is in some way. And so this is my favorite thing to do every day with people, is to really work this law of polarity and help people to see that what they think isn't in their life is in their life, and to help them become aware of it so that they can grow it and get more of it.
Oh, I think that's so important for people to understand and get a grasp of, because otherwise it can get a little, they can get a little confused with some of the different laws that are there and how they affect their lives.
Yeah, because the human mind, even though the whole is there, the human mind doesn't always see the whole. Actually, quite frequently it doesn't. The human mind perceives parts. And so with the natural laws, they're simple. I mean, I rattle off a whole bundle of them in one chapter. It doesn't take you long to read about them or learn them. However, to study them could take a lifetime, and that's because our perception as humans is polarized. And so literally, it's actually kind of fun. When we teach certification programs and we teach the laws, we've found that we have to teach them, and then we have to do a whole bunch of integration work and calls after we teach it, because what happens at first is people think they've got it, and then the next thing that happens is it's totally confusing to them. And then after that, which is interesting because there's a polarity right there. After that, they can start to begin to widen their polarized perception to begin to really learn the laws and really integrate them. But they can appear to be confusing because we're not used to seeing the whole of a situation. We're not used to seeing them. We're used to seeing parts.
Yeah, and that's if people really even understand them. Which I was looking at the law of gender. I was like, well, that makes sense. But until you really kind of read it and get a really kind of understanding about it, I think a lot of times people just kind of either they're not really aware of it, or they take it for granted, and maybe they're not really sure about what that all entails, which is probably more of the truth,
Oh, yeah, and in this day and age, we have a lot of stuff going on, which I think is fabulous, by the way, don't get me wrong, but about, like, feminine empowerment and feminine power and girl power and all of that. It's fascinating and well and good, and we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. And so for both genders to learn about both sides of the coin and both energetics, and then look at how am I using that energy within me, is really where it's at, not just from like that success and manifestation and all that point, but like we were talking about before, from a real place of fulfillment. As I've seen couples work with these energy dynamics within themselves, and then within the couple dynamic, the masculine feminine dynamics specific. So awesome.
Just a real amazing thing coming together as a couple working on that.
It's really powerful.
Well, in your book, you also talk about connecting with the divine. Why is this chapter so important?
Well, the divine's all around us, and, divine organizing power of the universe, God, universe, nature, whatever word you want to use around it, it's operating within and through us all the time, and yet, literally heard just from so many people feeling like they're disconnected from it. But that's actually impossible, which brings us back to that concept of, the polarized perception that we have. In my work, I have had a very spiritual slant to the kinds of work that I've done over the past 20 years. But for me, making it really practical is really, really important, because some people do want to talk about God, and that's great, and some people don't, and I think that's great too. But regardless, there is, whatever it is that you want to call it, that is a greater organizing force of the universe that literally, like, no human being could orchestrate things, grow babies and flowers and feed people and all this stuff that happens out in nature and be so unbelievably beautiful. Like, no human being could orchestrate that. And for us to be able to connect with that, not only does it bring a wonderful sense of connection and fulfillment and joy in our lives, I found that it also makes our lives a heck of a lot easier. To be perfectly honest with you, a lot of people are going about life wondering how they can just make life easier and more simple and more joyful. And that connection, it's been my experience, can really help with that, because it puts the missing piece on, again, something that's there that we're not really aware of. And when we have an understanding around how it works, like I said, the ease, that's the word I want to use. the ease that it can bring into a person's life and connection is just really remarkable.
I think it helps people make sense of everything too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, if my world makes sense and, you know, and yeah, I have some sense of the divine, then everything makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to talk about how if we didn't know about gravity, how scared we would be to do anything. We'd be scared of stairs. We'd be scared to go outside. You know, we'd be scared of windows, like if we didn't understand gravity. But we do. We know about gravity. So it's good. I can walk up and down stairs. I can go outside, and I can, you know, climb a tree or whatever. And can you imagine if we didn't know about that, how scary life would be? I mean, that's like the peace of mind that can be brought to a person when they really understand how things work.
Yeah, how the universe works, it would be a little scary thing. So having this information really kind of helps people move forward in a very powerful way for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when we talk about something like gravity, we're talking about something, I mean, it's not like we can see gravity, but you know what I mean. We can see the effect on our body. And when we talk about integrating the other laws into our lives, you know, it can be harder for people to really see. Like, you know, gravity, we're dropping a ball and we see it fall kind of thing. But it can be harder for people to really see and trust the information from some of the other laws. But they really can when you can have a little bit of faith. Like I just ask people, like I talk about in the book, to be open-minded, to lead with curiosity, be curious. And if you're curious, could this information be true? That's all it really takes to start to be able to learn.
Yeah, move from there. Well, and so when we talk about, you know, walking the path of self-realization, what are some of the challenges, either in thoughts or emotions, that people will usually be confronted with?
Well, I'll hop on that right there. I think one of the major challenges is that we don't have yet in our society a way to talk about emotions in a way that really accurately describes how they operate within our bodies. And what I mean by that is I really believe that in the next 10 years, we're going to have an emotional revolution that's just really begun. You know, I teach that emotions are two things. They're thoughts and their sensations, and those thoughts and sensations are all interwoven. So sometimes we wonder, you know, what we can do about our thoughts sabotaging us. And I would really love people to be, again, curious if perhaps what I'm saying could possibly be true, that rather than looking at thoughts and emotions as something separate, look at how thoughts are a part of emotions, and the other part is sensations. And sensations are these things that are literally the raw data of our nervous system. And so I go into all of that because I think the major thing that comes up for people, whether they're subtle or whether they're overt, whether they're expressed or whether they're repressed, is emotional content. And the way to start beginning to work with that is actually by witnessing what they feel like in the body from a sensory component. When we start to do that, it starts to profoundly, rapidly, and sustainably change the nervous system.
Well, that's, you know, when people hear that, they're like, oh, okay. So if it changes the nervous system, then that's something we should really pay attention to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. Well, and so when we look at this, because I know in your book you kind of break it down. You talk about shame and guilt and all these other things as well that you know, most people would look as, you know, kind of negatively impacting their life. You know, and we won't go into all of that, but, you know, once people have worked through that, how do they put their life back together?
You don't really have to put your life back together so much once you work through it. It is already there, I think, is the answer I'd love to give. So the task is to allow yourself or oneself to go into the emotions that we are, you know, not so fond of experiencing. And one of the things we don't want is we don't want to open that door because we think that they're going to be around forever. But the reality is that when you experience the quote-unquote negative emotions that are there that calling to you like, hey, pay attention to me. Once you pay attention to them, they actually can go away. So paying attention to them fully and completely is really important, because then they actually will wash through you. And once they do, what's left is you, the unity of you, the authenticity of you, the joy and the love that actually the love that is covered up by the gunkiness of the negativity. So, people always get a kick out of me, especially new clients, because they try to dance around stuff and, the shame, the blame, whatever. And I want to jump right in, because I know as soon as we get to it, the quicker we're going to get through it and help them to have the life that they are really looking for, because it's already there.
Mhm. Well, and isn't that the truth? Because we've got to do the work to get to the other side of whatever that stuff is, right? And so we do the work, but a lot of times people are like, "Ooh, it's going to be hurtful," or like how you said, it's like, "Gosh, if I open that door, I'll never be able to shut it."
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah.
But like people have been there before, and it's okay. You can walk through that.
Yeah, there's lots of people who have walked through it, and I truly believe that there are so many people who have paved the way by doing the deep work in their own lives, that they've paved the way for more people to go to those deep, dark places without having to have it feel so deep and dark, and without having to stay there a long time, and without having it be excruciating. I have a client who works with us who was barricading herself from, quote unquote, going there. She didn't want to go there because she thought it was going to be so bad and horrible, and she was going to crack and all this stuff. And she recently has had such a tremendous breakthrough, and it really was one small moment where she remembered a memory, and it was like opened up tremendous doors for her, and she laughed and she said, "I thought it was going to be so hard." I really think so many people have walked this path and paved the way that it doesn't have to be so scary and arduous as many people think that it would have to be.
Yeah. And that's really kind of, I think, where a lot of people kind of go. It's like, ooh, this is going to be nasty, because there are things in there. That's why it's a closet. There are things in there I don't want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey with all of that. Well, I know in your book, obviously there's so much. We talk about purpose. So once someone has done this journey and they've walked through all of this, how do they get to a place where they're like discovering what their purpose is?
Well, the process in the book is a process of finding your purpose. If you read about all the other things that I put in the book, then you'll be able to understand that purpose statement when you finally get there. You could get there and not have read anything else and think, well, that was fun for the moment, and then go about your life. But my purpose in writing the other things in the book are to really help people to really integrate that purpose statement. The Buddha says your purpose is to live your purpose. It's been my experience that this is true. We're always on purpose. We're always living our purpose. The part of us that thinks we're not is that gunky part that's covering up the goodness, and it's the part that's polarized and can't see the whole. But we are, in fact, always on purpose. And when we understand things like the laws, and when we understand the information about the divine or spirituality, when we understand the self-sabotaging behavior, then we can see all the other stuff that covers up the perceptions, those perceptions that are covering up what's truly there for us all the time. And then we can use that as a decision-making tool or a compass in our lives.
And how important is that? Because once it really is I found when I read the book, it kind of walks you through this place where you're able to release things you need to release, discover things you're supposed to discover. So when you come to the section about the purpose, you kind of have this fresh slate.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. That was absolutely my intention, because the purpose work is toward the back so that people can get a framework for the information before they get there. And then when we do some personal work with folks, whether they're taking our book club audio course or with us in person, we actually work the other way around so that we can then take the information that they read about, take the process and then integrate that. And so I just highly encourage anybody who's doing the work to do that too. It sounds silly, but to use it. So go forward to backwards and then go backward to forward.
And do it that way. Well, and so I'd love for you, we're not going to get into it too much. I know the book really explains it very well. But when you talk about finding your soul's agenda, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that there are these times in life where we feel like life is having its way with us, whether it's body symptoms that come up, it's relationship issues. It's like these moments in life where it's like, what is up? What's going on? And that's one of the reasons why I decided to call this process the soul's agenda. The popular belief is that purpose is about when I'm happy, when I'm fulfilled, when I'm being successful, I'm on purpose. And when I'm not those things, I'm not. And like I said before, that isn't my philosophy. My philosophy is that we're always on purpose. And so, I called it the soul's agenda because I do believe there is this part of us that's greater than our humanity, this part of us that's connected to all things, whatever you want to call it. I call it the soul. And that it is within each of us really looking to expand and grow, just like everything else in nature, just like the whole universe. The universe is expanding. So are we. And so if that's true, and if we're here to have a human experience, with this spiritual aspect of us, it's kind of like the spiritual aspect of us has an agenda all of its own. So what if we could take our personal agenda and align it with the spiritual agenda? What would that look like? And it's been my experience that what that looks like is, a lot of really cool stuff, like the day-to-day fulfillment, and the outward success stuff as well, like the expansion and growth that can happen. It's like a tree. A tree grows up and its branches grow out and its leaves reach towards the sun, but also what's happening is it's growing in depth and the roots are growing and they're networking with other roots. And that's what's happening for us too when we're really aligning our personal agenda with our soul's agenda.
Who do you feel that this book is for?
I think the book is perfect for anybody who asks themselves at any time, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with life? For people who are just on the track and they're just loving it up every moment of it, it's not for them. It's really for a person who has moments where they're like, maybe I'm off track. Why is life happening for me like this? I hadn't been able to put the pieces together for myself. This is absolutely the book for them. It is the book that helps to make sense out of things when you just can't quite fit all the pieces together.
Well, that's so inspiring. Well, Ani, where can people connect with you, learn more about your book, and be part of your community?
Well, the easiest place to go is to www.findyoursoulsagenda.com. That's the place where you can get a copy of the book. You can find out all of the places where the book is. You can get a workbook. You can contact us. You can find our Facebook group and social media stuff. Everything, the hub is there at findyoursoulsagenda.com.
Oh, perfect. Well, Ani, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was so much fun. Thank you.
Well, Ani, it's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Find Your Soul's Agenda. You can learn more about Ani and her work at findyoursoulsagenda.com, and her book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.